And you may choose to share your video or not. We do ask that when you're in the breakout and you're talking one-on-one, because it will be breakouts of 2 people, that you do turn your video on and of course unmute yourself. But for right now, please make sure you're muted just so we can hear the speaker and it doesn't interfere with anyone else's experience. We ask that you put any questions that you have in the chat, and please ask questions. That's what makes these sessions really impactful. Ask any questions you have. I'll be monitoring the chat for Kate and sharing them with her. If she needs clarification, she may ask you to unmute and clarify your question, but otherwise, please put it in the chat so that we can ask it when the time is appropriate. I think that's it, other than we have a few poll questions just to kick it off, because there are so many folks on this call from different places. We thought it might help you to understand who else is here and also help Kate know who her audience is. So I have a few poll questions for you. If you're on a computer, you can just use your mouse. The first 2 are multiple choice and you can select multiple answers. The third one is a write-in. If you're on a touch screen, you just click, you know the drill. Okay, so question number 1 that we're asking is, what do you hope to learn or try in this session? And again, you can click on multiple things for this if you want. I want to get better at talking about climate change with others. I want to practice living with the ways, these are going off my screen. I want to practice living with the ways that climate change impacts make me feel. I want to meet other people in the workshop and learn how they live with their climate feelings. I want some methods for involving other people in climate or environmental action. I want to be a better listener, or something else. And if there is something else, you can feel free to put that in the chat and ignore the untitled question number 2. I don't know why that's there. That's my fault. All right. So people are weighing in. I can see when everyone's sort of done their response. I'm just going to wait a few seconds while people are still thinking about what they'd like to indicate. And I don't know who's answering what. This is anonymous, so don't worry. Just choose whatever's appropriate for you. Whoever answered number 2, that's very funny. Okay, I think we have all of the responses. So I'm going to end the poll and I'm just going to share it so that you can see the responses. So as you can see, 13 people said that they want to get better at talking about climate change with other people. 8 people said they want to practice living with the ways that climate change impacts make them feel. 4 want to meet other people in the workshop and learn how they live with their climate feelings. 10 want some methods for involving other people in climate or environmental action. 6 want to be better listeners. And someone else said something else.
I would love to know what the something else is, which would require you to out yourself in the chat. But if you want to throw it in there, that'd be cool.
I actually forgot to make it private. So if you want to send your response privately to Grace Simpkins, I won't out who you are. Or if you don't mind being outed, you can out yourself. But while you're writing that in the chat, I'm just going to move on to the next poll question, just to make sure we get to all of the questions. So poll question number 2. What are some ways that you interact with climate change and environmental impacts? And again, you can choose as many of these as you want. I'm a scientist or researcher who studies them. I'm an educator who teaches about them. I'm a community activist / community organizer who attempts to shift the way we are responding to them. I'm a public worker, for example, urban planner, public health worker, or something else, who attempts to prepare for them. I'm a disaster responder who attempts to help people recuperate after them. I see and feel them in the place where I live. I see and hear about them on the news or social media, something else. And again, whoever said something else, we encourage you to put that in the chat. If you want to be anonymous, you can send that to me, and I will share it without sharing your name. Okay, almost everyone has chosen at this point. I'm going to give you a couple more seconds. And I apologize if you can hear my dog panting in the back. She sounds pretty loud to me. All right, I think everybody has weighed in. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results here. All right, so 10 of you are scientists or researchers who study them. 3 are educators, 6 are community activists or community organizers, 8 are public workers, 1 is a disaster responder, 15 see and feel them in the place where they live, 15 see and hear them on the news and social media. And for something else, again, if you're comfortable, please share that in the chat. All right, last question. This one's an open response, so I encourage you to write your answer in. Oh, and just in the chat, I'll quickly share the something else was that they're also an entrepreneur developing new nature-based solutions. Thank you for putting that in the chat, Carl. Okay, this is an easy one. Where do you live? Please share with us where you live. Okay. I'm going to tell you all, this is not working out the way I intended because I'm not seeing any answers. So please put it in the chat instead.
Yeah, what if we put it in the chat and then save the chat?
Yep, I'm going to save the chat. So
where are you calling in from?
Yeah. Apologies. That was my first time trying a Zoom write-in and I should have practiced it.
Sandwich, Mass, Providence, RI, Falmouth, couple of people, Brewster, Mass, Sandwich, a lot of people on the Cape, Cambridge, Barnstable, Bourne, Woods Hole, Southwest Brookfield, Burlington, and Comaquid, Milton, Martha's Vineyard, Falmouth,
Plymouth,
nice. Big Mass
Awesome.
presence, terrific.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you for taking place in the poll. Like I said, this is the last time you'll be hearing from me. So I'm going to turn it over to Shelley to hand it over to our workshop leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Hi, everyone. My name is Shelley McComb. I'm the Coastal Resilience Specialist with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution Sea Grant. And part of my background, I'm also with Barnstable County's Cape Cod Cooperative Extension. And I'm wearing my Hui Sea Grant hat today, but we are so excited to have Kate Schapira here from Brown University hosting this climate anxiety workshop as part of our Cape Cod Coastal Resilience Week. So I will drop the link to our website in the chat. We've had a whole bunch of fun events this week, ending with our pre-symphony concert lecture presentation storytelling. It's on the website for more info, but without further ado, Kate, take it away. And if you have any questions, let us know. We are here to excited that you guys are here and happy to help.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Grace. And thank you to all the Sea Grant folks for inviting me, and thank you all for coming. So my name is Kate Schapira. I am going to talk to you, and hopefully you're also going to talk to each other about climate change, emotion, and then how to turn that into connection and action. I'm going to share my screen here. 1 moment. All right, going to share that and do the slideshow. Okay, so the joke title of this presentation is How I Learned to Start Worrying and Love My Neighbors, which is a Dr. Strangelove reference for those who remember that movie. And it's because part of the reason I wanted to call it that is I don't think we need to try to stop feeling our climate anxiety. I think that what we feel about climate change has something to offer us and to offer to one another. So hold on, I gotta figure out where the little thingy goes. Shrink that down. Okay, put that there. All right, so who is Kate? What is climate listening? This is the part where we talk about what to expect from our time together. I am Kate Schapira. I have been listening to people talk about their climate emotions for over 10 years at a climate anxiety counseling booth that I invented. You may see a picture of me seated at it in my very first location in Kennedy Plaza, the big downtown bus station in Providence, Rhode Island, which is where I live. I also wrote a book about what I learned and what I then set out to learn after doing the counseling booth for many years. And that's what I want to share with you today. What are we going to practice today? There's sort of a few levels of involvement in this that you might find you want. So we're going to try some grounding exercises for any climate anxieties or other intense emotions that you have. in response to climate change. You can use them yourself. There's also going to be, they can also be of use if you want to share them with other people. And that could be informally, right? Like if a friend is saying like, this really stresses me out. I saw this on the news. I don't know what to think about it. And you can see that they're agitated. Maybe you'll want to try one of these exercises together. Also, if there's programming that you run, you could incorporate these exercises in between them. So for example, if you're letting people know about various climate impacts, maybe you would want to incorporate one of these exercises to help people understand like what it is they're feeling and not either push the emotion away or freak out. That's what was happening to me when I started the booth. Is I was seeing stuff on the news about climate change. I was seeing climate impacts around where I live, which is again in Rhode Island on the coast. And I didn't know what to do with what I was feeling. I would try to have conversations about it. The conversations would not go well. People were acting like maybe I was nuts, but I wasn't, and I knew that I wasn't. But I wanted to try to figure out a way of discussing this with people that would not have us either freaking out or shutting down. And so at the booth, what I ended up developing was kind of by accident, and then I learned more about how to do it on purpose. Some methods for active listening and responding that I want to share with you today that you can also use in a variety of discussions around difficult or fraught topics. That includes climate change, but it might include other areas of your research or work that people tend to reject. It can also be useful in political discussions, discussions with family about difficult things. They're really kind of useful across the board, I think. And that's the thing that you all are going to practice together. And then finally, we're going to talk about, should you want to do something like what I did and have a kind of formal structure for talking with people about climate change or other aspects of your research or other difficult topics that's suited to your capabilities and the cultures of your community. We will talk briefly about how to do that. And I'm also always glad to support people in more fully designing something that works for them. And then finally, I think what we'll do today is we will practice hearing each other. We will practice being heard. Whatever you are feeling about climate change, I guarantee you that there's many people who are feeling that same way. And some of them are even probably on this call. So let's take this opportunity to just practice being together with the stuff that we all know is happening in our world. We're going to start by doing a grounding exercise. This may be familiar to some of you. If it is, great. If not, let's try it now. I saw a lot of people listing locations on the Cape for places that they live. So maybe thinking about those or other climate impacts that you know about that are connected with your research, with the location of someone who matters to you or a place that matters to you. I'm going to ask you, so I'm just going to, you can see and read on the screen what we're going to do. We're going to think about that climate impact. We're going to let the feeling intensify and then let the feeling fall away. So let's try that now. I'm going to ask you to either close your eyes, unfocus them, stare at the wall. And I'm going to ask you to think about a climate impact that's close to your own heart or home. Imagine it vividly. Notice what you feel, whatever that feeling is. Notice where in your human form you're feeling it. Is it in your neck, chest? Is it in your knees, your jaw? And you know how when you're walking next to the road and a car comes toward you, the sound kind of rises and gets louder and more intense, and then it drops and gets softer as the car passes? That's what we're going to do with the image or the feeling you just brought up. So again, close your eyes or unfocus them. Whatever that feeling is, whatever you know about that climate impact, you're going to let it rise up, get intense, And then you're going to let it drop like a car passing. And now you're going to do it once more. And this time, if you want, you can also tense your muscles, whatever you can clench safely, clench it if you want when you let the feeling rise up, and relax them when you let it drop. So let the feeling rise up, tense whatever you're going to tense, your hands, your thighs, your jaw, your butt, your feet. Now let the feeling drop like the sound of the car passing. And if you closed your eyes, you can open them and just look around you at the place that you're in, whether that's outside or the room that you're in. Just notice what's around you in the room. So again, that's something that you can share with people. You can do it with people. You can do it by yourself. You could do it anytime. It is invisible, so you could do it in a tough meeting. You could step out of a room that you were in and take a break. You could do it in the face of a finding. You could do it when you're watching TV. The difference between doing this and just having a reaction that you then are kind of landed with is just that you're doing it on purpose. That is the only difference. You're not trying to make the feeling go away. You're not trying to tell yourself it's not true. You're just doing it on purpose. The reason that this is useful is that most of us, most adults in the US, according to Yale Climate Communication, which some of you are probably familiar with, most adults in the US recognize and worry about climate change. Way fewer of us talk about it. So the feelings that we just practiced feeling, a lot of people have. Most people recognize climate change as a reality. Just under half of the people in the country recognize that they've been harmed by it personally or consider it harmful. And yet it's extremely difficult to talk about. People are rarely or never discussing global warming with friends and family. And I was curious to know if you're willing to tell us in the chat, what do you think makes climate change so hard to talk about? If you've experienced challenges in talking about it, or if other people you know have, or if you just don't see enough people talking about it, what is happening, right? What is making it so difficult to talk about? So please do share that in the chat if you have a thought about that. This picture, by the way, is a picture from the Rhode Island State House objecting to the building of a new fossil fuel powered electricity plant, which is a fight that we won, by the way. I'm still very proud of us for that. What makes climate change so hard to?
Kate, do you want me to read these out to you, or you?
Yes, please. That would be wonderful.
Okay, so it can be a politically charged conversation. I think it's hard to face the absolute reality. Also, I think there's a certain amount of inherent guilt we all contribute to climate change. It's a thing that was theoretical in most people's daily lives for a long time, and now we can see and feel it, and see and feel are in all caps. I think it's a mechanism of denial that lets people not feel overwhelmed. Navigating disagreement, misinformation, and conflict. If the other party doesn't believe in it, it's hard to talk with them. I'm increasingly seeing environmentally minded people oppose climate solutions.
Cool. Thank you all.
And one more.
Oh, we got more? Yeah,
One more. Yep. Not wanting to seem overly negative or bring down a conversation. People would rather not talk about it at all. And a couple more, so I'm going to keep reading. Ignorance and confusion about elements of climate change that affect people. People feeling like they are being punished with regulations to reduce climate change when they perceive themselves as land stewards, for example, farmers and fishermen.
That's a very real one as well.
Some people still outwardly deny it exists, and it has become a political issue. Emotion-based as opposed to fact-based is tough to address.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for those responses. I think that's a very good cross-section of what some of the difficulty is. So I don't know how you all felt hearing all of those lists of obstacles. but you know how you felt. So let's take the opportunity to do that grounding exercise one more time. That is because, as my mother is fond of saying, what you practice, you get better at. So if you want to get better at grounding yourself, we got to do it again. I'll talk about the other quote in a second, but let's picture that climate impact, bring it in front of yourself vividly and fully. You're going to let that feeling rise up, tensing your body if that was helpful. Like the sound of a car passing, getting louder, and then getting soft. Relaxing your body if you did that. One more time. Letting it get intense, loud, rising up, and then letting it fade away. Thank you for trying this thing, which may seem weird. There is a neurological reason why that works when it works, but I don't know it. But I do know this thing that Thomas Merton, who was a monk, I think, said in the second quote that I have here, which is, if you bring forth what's inside of you, what you bring forth can save you. If you don't bring forth what's inside of you, what you bring forth can destroy you. And the reason that that quote is a touchstone for me is the reminder that what we feel is going to shape what we do, whether we acknowledge it or not. The people who are performing all of those responses that you all noted, the denial, the fear of conflict, the politicizing, the guilt, the frustration, all of those people, the feelings that they're feeling are real, they have a right to them, and they are going to direct those people's actions. But if you bring forth what you bring forth, what you have to bring forth deliberately, it can save you. If you don't bring it forth, it can destroy you. The role is in the intention, right? Bringing intention to the realm of emotion. So how do we do that? Well, one way is to invite people to speak out and bring forth what is inside of them through this active listening process. So again, curious for people to state in the chat as I kind of walk through these things, what are some of the things that you know about in terms of active listening? What are some ways, if you want someone to keep talking, what are some things that you do? And I know that some of you are educators, some of you are disaster responders who might be kind of asking questions about that. Some of you are maybe trying to share, to gather research to share. Maybe there's something in there. So some elements of active listening that you know could start going into the chat. I wanted to go over some of these things together. These are things that I developed at the climate anxiety counseling booth over years and years. They also come from the fact that I'm a classroom teacher at Brown. And these are some of the things that I also do with my students there. So the first one's going to be very obvious, questions that can keep people talking. I like these that I put here, like, where did you hear about that? Who do you talk with about that? What's important to you about that? I use those often because they're neutral. They don't imply any judgment. They let the conversation be guided by the person themselves and what matters to them. And that is more likely, I think, to bring out some truth and some stuff that they'll remember and want to know about themselves and what they think about the world that will stick with them rather than anything that I might say. If you want to show another person that you hear them, you can say back to them some of the stuff that they said, if that flows with the conversation that you're having with them. You can watch their body language to see how they're doing. That's something that if many people do that without knowing that they're doing it. So again, it's just a matter of intention. How are they standing? What is their face doing? If they're sitting, how are they sitting? Where are their shoulders? Where is their chest? Are they looking at you or are they looking away? And then finally, rooting your questions in what they've just said. So if you want to get them to keep talking, ask them about what it is that they've been talking about. Every now and again, I saw people mention climate denial and politicization in our previous element of the chat. You might want to de-escalate. I would say in these conversations about climate change or anything else that is challenging or emotionally difficult to talk about, avoid arguing or trying to convince. If you know a lot about the topic, this is extremely difficult. I made a lot of mistakes when I started running the counseling booth. I would try to convince people, I would try to argue, and I wasn't even getting a lot of climate deniers. I was just getting people who didn't think it was that important, thought that they were, that they were like, kind of putting the blame on somebody else, right? It was always somebody else's fault. Arguing doesn't do anything in this situation. It's not good for this. It doesn't do what you want it to do. It sort of hardens the person who's talking, and then it also hardens you. And so you both kind of stay where you are, you don't learn anything. And one of the things that you're not learning in those moments is how to communicate with them. And we can talk a little bit more about that later on. If it gets really intense and that kind of hardening has already taken place, just step away. It's okay. You can end the conversation. You always have the right to end a conversation. And then finally checking in with yourself. What is your habitual reaction when someone gets loud? I got yelled at a lot growing up. So when someone gets loud in my presence, I go to the past. And it has been an effort for me to kind of stay in the present that I'm actually in if someone is yelling at me. And those would be a moment, that would be a moment when I would probably choose to physically step away rather than to be there, but also not be there at the same time. If you're deliberately taking on a listening role, you might want to give yourself some sort of signal. When I was at the counseling booth, I have the booth itself, right? Which is like a thing that says like, I'm a listener. I'm here to listen. That's what the sign says. But also I wear my big hat that you saw in the picture, if you can see pictures. The example, the magic feather thing that's on the screen, I don't know if you all have seen Dumbo, the Disney cartoon, but Dumbo has a magic feather and he thinks he needs it to fly. And so he can fly whenever he's holding it. And then of course, eventually he learns that he doesn't need the magic feather to fly. He just needs his gigantic ears. But that's another story. The point is, if you decide to take on this task, giving yourself a way to say, okay, now I'm in this role where I'm not arguing, I'm just trying to listen and invite conversation, that can be helpful. And then if your attention starts to drift, like maybe your attention is drifting a little bit right now because I've been talking for a really long time. How will you refocus? How will you bring yourself back? Will you have a sip of water that you take? Will you do a grounding exercise like the one that we just did? What will work for you? I see that there are some responses in the chat. Do people want to, Grace, would you be willing to read some of those out?
Sure. I'm just going to kind of go through the list. I try to ask the speaker questions. For example, tell me more about that. I try to make sure there's no distractions like phones. Trying to give the speaker your complete and full attention. Again, asking questions, making eye contact. Sometimes if you're silent, so don't say anything, people may fill in those gaps of silence. Can make assumptions or take risks trying to understand. So for example, asking, am I hearing this right? You can also ask clarifying questions such as, what does this mean? You can say, tell me more about that. Don't ask yes or no questions. It might engage folks more. Have patience in repeating information and explanations and understand that it may take many interactions to actually reach someone. And when someone gets defensive or like they are feeling pressure to make change, this particular person likes to ask them where that feeling comes from, who told them that they had to change, or where they are feeling that pressure. And sometimes that can make the conversation get really deep. And also understanding that some people are not open to changing their point of view. So you don't have to give up, but you might have to step back and look for another opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think I also am interested in, maybe this is not the conversation where they do change their point of view, but having their actual point of view genuinely heard by another person can open the door for change. Again, think about that hardening that we were talking about a moment ago. If someone feels like they have to defend their position, they are unlikely to change that position in that moment. If someone feels like their position has been fully heard, they might be willing to question it themselves later on. So as we go into our next thing, which is actually trying this together, I don't know that the position changing thing is going to come up, but it might. You don't really know what is going to happen. And people do have slightly different reasons for being here. But in the breakout rooms that Grace is going to create for us, I'm going to ask you to get a notebook or a notes app ready. Because I'm going to ask you to write down a couple of things that you want to remember and share when we return to the big group. Then we're going to have about 6 minutes to talk together, and breakout rooms are going to be 2 people. One person is going to speak about a climate impact close to their own heart or home. The other person is going to listen, and as best as you can over Zoom, show them that you're listening. Nod, make facial expressions, whatever you do to indicate receptivity. Then when you get the 1 minute alert, then you're going to switch. Other person's going to go. When you get the 1 minute alert to return to the big group, you're going to call for a pause and write down 1 or 2 things that you want to remember and share. Do folks have questions or need anything clarified before we go to the breakout rooms? Questions or clarifications?
What kind of things do you want us to write down? How the listening went or how there was active listening?
1 or 2 things that you want to remember and share. You are the chooser of what you want to remember and share from that conversation. Any other questions? All right, let's give it a try. See you in about 6 minutes.
You all should, is everybody seeing an invitation to join a breakout room? No, I'm gonna just assign, okay. I'm gonna give me 1 second. I'm gonna just randomly assign you all to a partner, and then I will open the breakout rooms. So just give me 1 second to do that. I'm not sure why it didn't randomly, but. And I'm really not looking at names. So whoever you got assigned, I'm just sort of clicking 2 people. I don't want anyone to think that there is any intentionality other than you're probably not close to someone who's alphabetically, their first name is close to you. Okay. The person that is going to be in a breakout room by yourself, I'll be joining you. I will be your partner. So don't worry, I'll be there in a second. All right. See you all in 6 minutes. So I am going to join this person. All right, I think everyone should be back, Kate. Except that you are muted.
Thank you, Grace. Anything that stood out to you from that experience, whatever you wrote down, would you be interested in sharing it in the chat? Or even, is anyone interested in speaking it out loud? Could we do that? Something you remember, want to take with you, something you noted, either way in the chat or out loud.
I have something I could share.
Yeah.
What really struck me was, I was talking with Ken, and I felt this impulse to try to make some connection and so sort of identify common experience, find common ground, like, yes, this is similar to what I'm thinking in this way, you know, to try to as a kind of demonstrate, both because it's legitimate, but also to kind of demonstrate I'm hearing you, and I think I'm empathizing about certain things.
Thank you. Couple
Yeah,
of Ken, go ahead.
we were paired in a breakout, and I think, you know, my concerns over preparedness, you know, saying them out loud and having Carlo respond in kind just made me realize that, you know, I'm not alone in the feelings that I have, and the anxieties. It's something that's shared, but speaking them out loud sort of helps break things down a little bit into granular, doable chunks.
That is really interesting and cool. Other people, I see a couple of things in the chat. Topics are very emotional. Absolutely. It went by fast. Yeah, that was I will say that was also a very short version of this process. Generally, when I converse with people about this stuff, we have a little bit more spaciousness. So I appreciate you all kind of trying to do it in this tight time frame. If you do it again on purpose with other people, I hope that you will, you know, try to give yourself room and then give them some room too. So let's say, just for the sake of argument, I know not everyone's going to want to do this, but go ahead, Grace. I see a hand. What's up?
Sorry, I just wanted to share one other person that shared something with me directly. They said that being able to speak without worry about offending or disturbing my partner was very freeing. So I wanted to share that as well.
That's wonderful. That's really cool. And I think definitely something to remember. How can you create that for another person? Yeah, things get emotional quick. Yes, absolutely, Abigail. Thanks for, you know, just bringing that forward. So let's say, just for the sake of argument, let's say that you wanted to take this one step further and do it not just one-on-one, but in a situation that you create, a frame that you make, let's say a little listening station, whatever you want to call it. There's a few things to think about. All of them are listed here if you were really going to do it. But the three most important things to think about are, what do you want people to walk away with? Do you want them to walk away questioning their own position? Do you want them to walk away feeling heard, as we sort of were talking about just a moment ago? Maybe sometimes that's the only thing that is needed. Maybe sometimes that's all that you can do. Do you want to give them an opportunity to take some form of action, collective action, action with you, action with others? Do you want to know what's going on with them, to kind of take the temperature of the place where you, as it were, of the place where you're living, or of a group of people that you're working with? So thinking about what you would want other people to walk away with would affect the questions that you asked, but also the design of your space, the way that you described it to others, and your demeanor, as well as kind of like, I'm thinking a little bit about how you design, if you are a researcher, how you design a study, right? It's very similar. It's what am I trying to find out, or what am I trying to set up? You're also going to think about what your communication style is, right? Are you somebody who likes to make jokes? Are you somebody who likes to ask questions? Are you somebody who deals with your anxiety, stress, whatever, with humor? Are you a vehement person? Are you a calm and low-key person? That's going to affect the kind of offering that you make to have these conversations, as well as the conversations themselves. There are questions here about controlling the topics you discuss, what to do if someone gets upset, how you're going to set it up physically and logistically, letting people know how the information might be used, next steps. But the other really important, the third key thing is, where will you set up? And the reason that that matters is that affects who you'll see. It affects what they'll be seeing besides you. So when I set up my little booth in Kennedy Plaza, for example, I chose that place because it was in the middle of a city. It was an area that experiences heat island effect, even though it was also under some nice trees. And it was right across from the big Providence bus station, the bus hub, meaning that I was getting, and I set it up from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. So I was getting kids coming out of school. I was getting people coming out of work. I was also getting people kind of crossing downtown on their way to do stuff for various reasons. I was also getting people who were spending the day in the park where I was setting it up, often because they had no better place to go during the day, no safer place to go during the day. So it meant that I was getting a very strong cross section of people who live in my city, and that's what I wanted. On the other hand, I didn't get an awful lot of parents or younger children, because very often people in that situation, they're either going someplace in the car, or if they are taking the bus, they're really just trying to get everything like organized as fast as possible. They're trying to like haul the stroller on off the bus. They're not going to stop and chat. I didn't get a lot of, I got people who were like in the middle of doing things. So sometimes they didn't have a lot of time to stop and talk. So it really, the choice of where to set up is really going to affect who you're going to hear and what kinds of conversations you're able to have. This kind of setup is obviously not for everybody. I have a life that makes it very easy because as a professor, I have my summers off. I'm able-bodied. I'm not, I don't have an appearance that leads people to physically like profile me and target me negatively most of the time. I think that all of those things are going to affect whether and how you might like to do this particular thing. All right, questions. We got a few minutes. I'd like to learn from you all, and actually, I'd love to hear your voices if you're willing. How you think you might use or take away what you tried today, some obstacles for you, things that make you nervous, and finally, whether you'd like to stay in touch with other people from today. The pictures that you see here are pictures of people who actually did set up booths on their own. The middle person did it first and then told me about it. The other people worked with me to design their setup. Debbie on the left is set up outside of Decatur Pride, the first Pride Festival in Decatur, Alabama. Madeline Charney is in the middle in Northampton, where she lives. And Erica is the middle person in the photo on the right in Sheffield, Mass. Talking, I don't remember who her second person is there, talking with someone at an event. Ask questions. What do we got? Oh yeah, Ken super nicely just shared also a link to my book. Thank you, Ken, that's awesome. Yes, my book will also give you way more tools, especially for the action side of this, which we actually didn't talk about a lot. Is that something that people would like to bring up a little bit? Abigail's remind us. No, go ahead.
So Grace and I were at a science event in Boston for high school students, and I can't remember the name of it, but if it becomes important, Grace will remember. But there was a group of folks who were part of the Climate Conservation Corps, I think, and they had a booth set up where you could write like a climate worry, and then there was a positive side too, but I can't remember what the positive side was because I was just so relieved to have a place to put my climate worry. But I was wondering if you are doing any work with them or aware of them at all.
No, but I mean, I love that they're doing that. I think it's convergent evolution, right? I think it's kind of like people are increasingly realizing, and you all are realizing this too, I think, while you're here, that some sort of format for talking about this stuff is helpful. Not always in ways that are easy to measure, but in ways that I think we do feel. Like you felt some relief when you could write down how you're feeling, even though how you're feeling is, I'm guessing, not terrific.
Right. Yep.
Other folks, what questions do you have about this realm, this process, how it might fit into the rest of your work or your life?
Kate, hi, it's Stephanie at Grace's desk. Hello. I was just curious, when you set out your booth, do people see your sign and come up and just want automatically sort of want to chat, or are you kind of inviting them over, asking them if they have thoughts about climate they want to share, or how much of the like sort of busking are you doing, and how much are people really just kind of eager to and happy to find someone to talk to about this?
So I never call out to people. The exception might be like, if I see like a little kid looking at me, I might like wave or say like, I like your hat or something, but never call people over, because I hate having that done to me. I hate it. I hate being buttonholed, right? So that's kind of an example of like, I know some people don't mind it, but that's a part of like who I am and what I like has kind of shaped the format of what I do. So no, I don't call out to people.
Yeah, come on in.
And I will also add that the number one question I get as an opener is what is this? So like people come up and like, what is this? And then I kind of have a little spiel that I say like, oh, I'm asking people about their climate change anxieties. Do you have any anxieties that you would like to share today? And that's kind of how I open the box. Susan, I saw that you had a question, but then I also saw that you got up. So I will be happy to take that question back. Marie, I'm seeing in the chat that the validation is helpful. Marie, I would love to know, is there an action that you would like to invite other people in this group to join you in?
Can you hear my audio?
Yeah.
I think I don't think my camera's working, but
okay.
Anyway, yes, first off, Amelia, who I met during the breakout, thank you so much. I didn't really get a chance to go. It was a one-way conversation, but she asked excellent questions. I am working to conserve 30 acres of land here on the Cape. And while I have a lot of people who are willing to put up signs and do emails, it's more or less a one-person thing in the end. So sometimes I'm just out there by myself, and I go to meetings and I have to present things, and this is not in my comfort zone. I'm the kind of person who likes to do just the research and stuff. But Amelia asked me, well, how do you do that? And I ask myself that every time I have to do it. And what I do is I sort of remove myself from the actions that I'm taking. And I'm able to then do it as dispassionately as someone can. And then after whatever, meeting or whatever action I'm taking is over, then I can, think about this as a whole and what I'm actually trying to achieve. So having a group like this, having validation to people saying, yes, I understand what you're doing, is vital for someone like me, because otherwise even though there are other groups, when you're trying to do a particular action, it can get a little lonely. And the other fear that I always have is that if I get people to do one email, I think that's great, but I hope that they don't think that that's enough.
That question of what is enough is such a hard question, I think, in this crisis, because there's a certain way in which nothing is enough. And so for me, I'm often interested in shifting that question into like, what's what's a little more? How can I figure out how
Right.
to do a little bit more in conjunction with somebody else who's also doing a little bit more? Marie, if you're willing to put your contact information in the chat, people
Oh, yeah.
can then get in
Yeah.
touch with you about the
Yep.
work you're doing and maybe support.
Okay, I'm gonna give you my website.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, put it in the chat. Everybody check out, when we get off the call today, check out the work that Marie is doing and see if you could send not one email, but maybe like 5 emails. Awesome. Yes, thank you. Okay, Amelia's got a question. Some environmental communicators have been wary of too alarmist crisis messaging. How do I feel about
Yes,
the age of catastrophic thinking with climate change discourse? Okay, so
excellent question.
great question. Thank you, Amelia. I would say that I don't worry too much about messaging myself personally because of the approach that I've taken to it. Because what I'm interested in is hearing where other people are coming from and seeing if I can connect them with the opportunity to connect with other people based on the feelings that they're feeling for actions that they could take. I think that a lot of catastrophic thinking, quotes unquotes, catastrophic messaging is, sorry, this is a therapy term. Everybody brace yourself. Is very like all or nothing thinking. You know what? I'm gonna stop screen sharing so maybe we can like see each other a little bit. That's good. Okay, cool. I think it can be very all or nothing thinking. Like, oh, like if you're not doing the most, then you might as well not be doing anything. I don't think that's even true. Like, I don't think it's even factually true. I think that, thank you, Katie. Thanks for being here. I think that the work that Marie is doing to try to steward some land, I think that the work that people are doing to try to nourish various ecosystems, the work that people are doing to try to lobby, if you can see that as itself part of an ecosystem of attempted change and figure out where you might fit into that ecosystem in the same way that you fit into your the actual literal land and water and air where you live, you might not just have a better time in your feelings, but be more effective in your actions. Amelia, does that address your question at all?
It does. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Other questions, things that people want to bring to the front? Yeah, Anne, go for it.
So I think that my husband has been involved in the anti-nuclear movement for decades and decades. This was his profession, and the organization that he helped steer actually won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2017. But what I saw through these years was many, many, many failures, many, many, many disappointments, and there still are, and nuclear weapons still exist. But what I saw was always trying to chip away at a new way to look at it, a new way to think about it. And they came up with a new way to come up with a ban treaty that is in effect. It is actually illegal internationally to possess nuclear weapons. But if you don't sign the treaty, you're not subject to it. But my point is that even though the clock is ticking, every little bit can bring us closer to at least slowing complete environmental disaster. And so I think it's hard to remember, but it's important to remember that you are doing something. And I forget who said it. And the point is maybe you can do a little more. I think it was you, Kate, who said, what about doing a little more? Little more. You don't have to save the whole world yourself, but a little more.
Thank you, Anne. I think that's a really good reminder. And the comparison to nuclear proliferation, I can't say words, is really instructive. My dad grew up in the era of duck and cover, and we've had some pretty great conversations about this, about what it was like to live with that threat. And I think that that's another thing to remember, is that those of us who do recognize the reality of it are living with a lot of strain. And that, as I think Ken and Carlo both said, being able to speak about that strain to one another both offers us the opportunity to connect for action, but also means that we're not carrying that strain, each of us alone. Other thoughts and questions that folks have from this, including challenges, if people want to raise any challenges to some of the stuff that has come up. Grace, I'm seeing a hand. What's up?
Yeah, so I'm an educator, right? So I see lots of young kids and up to general public adult. And what I really struggle with is a lot of times when we're talking about their anxiety or just talking about the issue, they want solutions. Like so they're understanding, they're like, what can I do? Because I think that's our instinct, like, right, what action? And I always struggle with hitting the right note with the right group that I'm talking to. And my worry, and I think it kind of goes along with what Marie was saying, is my worry with kids in particular is if I'm giving them like sort of small things, because I want to give them something they can do and take ownership of, so they feel like they own part of the solution, is that again, they're going to think, okay, I've done my bit, when really that's just a drop in the bucket, and we need so much more, and we need bigger. Like, so when I go to climate change trainings and they're like, we need big action, it makes the smaller actions feel not as significant, when maybe the smaller actions are all that someone can do at the time or has the ability to do. And so I struggle with how to make everyone feel like to give them something they can do, to feel good that they're doing something, to want to do more, but not to feel like they're not, that just because they don't have the ability to do some of the bigger things, that they're not part of the solution. I'm not sure I'm saying this exactly right, but that's what I struggle with the most, I think.
No, you said it really well. I have an answer to this, but I would actually like to hear if anybody else has a way of handling this, whether it's ways that you talk about it with the children in your life, whether they're children that you learn with or children that you raise in your home, or I feel like there might be some collective wisdom here. So let's, does anybody have any suggestions to kind of augment what Grace is already doing or give a new light to it?
I think everybody under 12 gets a pass on doing things that are actually going to improve the climate situation, and that empowerment of those kids is the best thing that we can do. Like giving them things that make them feel like they have agency to, express themselves and make a change. And then that hopefully can be translated into more meaningful action, or not meaningful, but like more practical actions down the road. So I think you're striking the right balance, Grace.
Other thoughts on that to augment what Abby has?
I don't know. I don't really have an idea for you, Grace, but I do want to say that I think it's refreshing that you're having these conversations with kids and that they are aware maybe that their actions have an impact, even just making sure that all of the next generation are understanding that what they do matters, and even how they live will have a long-term effect. That's huge, because at least a lot of my friends and the kids I see coming up, even like just material things and just recycling, like really basic, they're not learning that from their parents. So hearing that you're seeing some kids that do care is that's helpful to know, or good to know. So thanks.
Well, they definitely all want to do something, and they do care. So just, any young person that you meet, that you talk, they're the most eager crowd you're going to find.
So both of my kids have gone through Grace's meetings in school. And I think honestly, one of the best things you can do with young kids is the active listening. It gives them the agency, the understanding that their thoughts are important. And it allows them to, into the future, not on the day that she's there, but going forward, to think, if you turn it around to them and you say, well, what changes can you make in your life? What's something you can do, or what's your thought on this situation? That they can keep doing that and practicing that in their life. And that's, not something that every kid experiences. So just giving them that agency over scientific thinking, I think, is so powerful.
Yeah, all of that is really good. Thank you, Anne. Stay out of the rain. I think what I would add is kids aren't stupid. But the ways that they're not stupid are a little bit different than the ways that grown-ups aren't stupid. So
Amen to that.
figure it. I think there isn't a way to talk with kids. Usually there are like ways to talk with like a kid. But Grace, of course, is doing it at the classroom level. And so my very, very first thing that I would do, and which I do in fact, with my own students who are a bit older, and which I also often do at the counseling booth, is to say, what do you already know and what have you tried? And then again, going back to this idea of a little bit more, I would say, that's awesome. Great job. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. Do you want to invite anybody else to do that with you? Or here's one other additional thing that you could think about doing. Really, like, you know, amping it up a little bit more. I would also, I think, remember that I think I might scale my conversation with them to their agency. So I might kind of ask them, for example, like, would your folks take you to a public hearing if you asked? Would your parents get you to a public hearing if you asked to go? Would you, you know, like, what kind of support are they able to gather from the people around them in doing the things that they would like to do? If they feel like they're not doing enough, what kind of support could they get for doing a little bit more? And then finally, and this is the one place where I'm gonna maybe like take a little bit of a stance. Encourage collective solutions. Don't mess around with the household stuff. They know all that already. They know about, you know, they know about like composting. They know about all of that. Don't worry about that. Get them thinking collectively. Get them thinking about what's going to be effective in their neighborhood. Get them thinking about what's going to be effective in their town. So, for example, instead of thinking about like, do you guys compost at your house? You could ask them, hey, does your town have a composting program? Now, is a 12-year-old going to be able to cause their town to have a composting program? No, of course not. Could 10, 12-year-olds maybe get their school to have a composting program? Let's find out. Let's find out. I also have, I wrote with a co-wrote and then had edited many times by many very bright people, an educator's guide to climate emotions that I'm super happy to share. The other thing I think, so Grace is saying, you know, talking about kids who are 5 and up. Again, I think, you know, as an educator, you know what scale of action and information is possible for the children of the ages that you teach. What can a 5-year-old do? 5-year-olds are just learning that other people are people. They're also just learning about time. They're also just learning that, like, if you are not allowed to put ants in someone's hair right now, you're also not allowed to put ants in someone's hair 5 minutes from now. That's going to be a really different conversation than you might have with a 12-year-old who might actually be able to say, like, hey, like, could we have a bike to school day? So kind of gearing it toward what everybody's up to. School-wide composting in Orleans, sick as hell. That's awesome. So yeah, but that invitation to think collectively, to understand that anything that we do about climate change, we have to do with other people, is, I think, a really wonderful lesson for people to have. And it is something that I think people even as young as 5 can start to understand. Susan, I feel like back in the day you had a question. Does that question still apply? Not hearing. Okay. Other questions or oh no, you do have something. Good.
Yep. So sorry, my computer and all kinds of distractions. But I need just a little bit of help with closing. I get people to really open up quickly and then they'll never shut up. So I don't want to shut them down, but how do you get them to go, great, thanks, and now I can go.
So glad you asked that. Very important skill to have. My number one move for that is always leave in the middle of your own sentence. And thank them and say, you know, like, so you're saying something, you're talking, and then you say, you know, thank you so much for talking with me. I'm so sorry, but I have to go, or I'm so sorry, but I gotta make room to talk with another person. When I'm doing the booth, when I have a long talker, I sometimes say like, hey, I really want to listen to as many people as I can here. So thank you so much for talking. I really appreciate this. And usually people do respond to that. But and this is also especially true if they're being like kind of aggressive, be like, you know, like you can also, you know what, this also really works. You can say like, hey, I need a minute to collect myself and think about what you just said. That one usually works pretty well.
That's excellent. Thanks. That really helps.
If you get a real dickhead, walk away.
Yep. That's great. Thank you.
Okay. I am seeing that we are at 1:15, which is a long time. Let's let each other go. Let's do that grounding exercise one more time if you're still with us, just to practice it, just to get good at it. And then we can say goodbye. All right, so once again, you're gonna bring forward some image or some intense feeling that you have in response to climate change. Close or unfocus your eyes if you like. You're gonna let that feeling rise up and intensify. You're gonna let it drop. And again, you can do that anytime you want. It's yours, it belongs to you. Thank you so much. Grace, I'm gonna stay on for a second. Everybody else, thank you again. I really appreciate you and all that I know you are doing. Amazing.
And I just want to say a big thank you to Kate, because both thank you, I'll say that as a program, but also this was incredibly educational and I learned a ton that I can immediately apply to what I do. So very appreciative of that. And just a reminder, everyone, this was recorded, so you can go back and watch the recording if you want to see it again or if you missed anything. But Kate, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your wealth of knowledge and giving us so many tips. Really, really, Hui C. Grant, thanks you.
And
And
everybody
thanks for
is
being.
welcome to ask, to reach out to Hui and ask for my contact if you want to work together further. Always happy to support people's work.
Secret at Hui.
Yeah, I'm going to put an email in here. So if anyone wants to reach out to us, we're happy to share the link with you, and you'll get a follow-up survey. Please take it when it comes and we'll give you Kate's information. But thank you, and see you all, or not. Well, have a great day. Say it that way.
Brian, thank you so much for those kind words. No, he's gone. Marie, thanks so much for sharing your story. I hope people get in touch with you to talk about this work.
Well, thank you. I feel so much better that, you know, you can get on a path and just feel like you're out there all alone and forget that there are many other people who are involved in climate change and everything that goes with that.
Thank you, Marie.
So this is great.
Good luck. Take care.
Thanks.
All right, sorry, I kicked everyone else out. That's what I do. When I don't want to like end it right away, but I want everyone gone, I sort of kick everyone out. So I did. Thank you, Kate. That was really helpful.
Thank you.
Oh, hold on. I'm going to stop the recording.